Now, moving on to the next functional group. So, if we have COOR group present, the prefix that we use is alkoxy carbonyl, or carb alkoxy. And the suffix that we use is alkyl carboxylate. Alright, moving on, if we have COX, that is, X here represents a halide. So if we have an acid halide, this represents an acid halide. So if we have an acid halide, the prefix that we use is nothing, and the suffix that we used is oil halide. Alright, moving on, if we have COX as a whole present, then we use haloformyl, and at the suffix we use carbonyl halide. Alright, moving on, if we have NH2 group over here, now this is the amide group. So if we have any carbon ONH2, then we call this, the prefix is nothing, but at the suffix we have amide. So at the end we'll just put amide over it. But if CONH2 is present as a whole, then the prefix that we used is carbamoyl, and we use carboxamide for the suffix. Next, if we have C, that is cyanide present, then we have no prefix for this, but the suffix will be nitrile. Moving on, if we have CN as a whole present, then the prefix is cyano and the suffix is carbonitrile. Moving on, if we have, suppose, say N connected with the carbon like this is isocyanide, of course, and here no prefix, and we use the suffix as isonitrile. Moving on, if we have NC as a whole, then the prefix becomes isocyano, or it can be carbyl amino. Also, the suffix can be carbyl amine. So here we use carbyl amine. Moving on, if we have NEC present with HO, that is the aldehyde group, then the prefix is oxo and the suffix is al. But if we have CHO as a whole, then the prefix becomes formyl and the suffix is carbaldehyde. Moving on, if we have this kind of group present, that is the ketone group, then the prefix that we use is keto or oxo. And the suffix that we'll be using is on. Next, if we have OH, that is a very common functional group. This is the alcohol, of course. The prefix that we'll be using is hydroxy, and the suffix that we will be using is ol. Next, if we have SH, now this is called thio alcohol. The prefix that we use is mercapto, and the suffix that we'll be using is thiol. Lastly, if we have NH2, that is the amine functional group, the prefix that we'll be using is amino, and the suffix that we'll be using is amine. So this ends our functional group that we'll be using. Coming on to the substituents that can be present and the prefix that we'll be using. So substituents and the prefix that we'll be using. Alright, now let us begin. So if the substituent that we have over here is the R group, then the prefix that we'll be using is alkyl, methyl, ethyl, etc. If it is an X, that is halogen, then we use the prefix as halo. Next, if we have NH2, then the prefix that we used is amino. Next, if we have N double bond O with NO, that is NO2, we call this nitro. Next, if we have ONO, now here there's attachment with O, this is called nitrite. Next, if we have N double bond O, then we call it nitroso. Next, if we have OCH2, CH3, then we call this as ethoxy. Next, if we have CH2OH, then the prefix that we use is hydroxymethyl. Next, if we have CH2Cl, then the prefix that we'll be using is chloromethyl. Next, if we have NHCH3, then we use methylamino. Moving on, if we have S, then we call this as thio. Next, if we have SR, that is S connected to an alkyl group, we call this alkyl thio. Next, if we have CH3, C double bond O, O group, then we call this as acetoxy. Or we can call this as ethanoiloxy. Next, if we have CH3, CH2, C double bond O with an O, we call this as propanoiloxy. Next, if we have C6H5 as well as C double bond O and an O present, we call this as benzoyloxy. And lastly, if we have an OR as substituent, we call this as alkoxy. Alright, so this ends the substituents for us.